Welcome to the PHAROS FIT podcast, where we help you to explore your capacity to move better, push further, and achieve your limitless potential through fitness, nutrition, recovery, and lifestyle. Hey guys, welcome back to the PHAROS FIT podcast. I'm here today with my producer, Brendan. Hey Brendan, how you doing?
Good, Pete. Pete, how are we doing today?
Pretty good. Just took a little power nap. It's pretty tired.
I'm sure it's much needed now with the baby.
It is.
Yeah.
Little power nap, but now I've got a little bit of coffee, a little shake in front of me. Okay, yeah, today we're talking about programming, probably my favorite thing to talk about. A lot of people ask me, what I think the difference between PHAROS is and other gyms and why PHAROS has been successful. And I think a lot of that comes down to the programming. It was something that from the start we were very conscientious about, very purposeful with, and we wanted to make it very clear, what our programs do and what they are for. Jeff, came from this CrossFit background. I'd had certainly done my fair share of CrossFit, as had my wife Emily, and I think there's always been kind of this weird misunderstanding of what that type of training does. I think for the longest time it was like, well, a guy shows up to the gym, is like, I want to put on some muscle. What should I do? I was like, well, do CrossFit. And then there's like, same person turns up and says, well, I want to lose some weight. What should I do? It's like, well, do CrossFit. And it's like, that is true to a degree. Like at a certain, if the bar is low enough, like everything will work because your bar is so low. But at a certain point, you can't just do that type of training and expect to keep making gains. At a certain point, you have to kind of specify and have more purpose with that programming.
Agreed. As an athlete who's been in and out of gyms, his whole life, like I can totally agree to that. It's
right.
It's coming to see you guys in your guys' gym. I mean, the diversity in the amount of classes and just the quality or the types of classes you have is just so wide ranging. You guys do a good job of pulling it off.
Yeah, in the beginning, it was very small. So basically, we divided like CrossFit type training into two primary programs, which were Build and Train. And it was understood from the outset that Build would have a strength emphasis, a strength and hypertrophy emphasis, and Train would have more of a cardiovascular emphasis. So it was kind of dividing up the different elements of the sport like CrossFit and saying, well, truthfully, if your only goal right now is to gain lean muscle tissue, then you're better off having your bias in the build area. If your goal right now is to simply just lose weight and be a better conditioned athlete and lose more body fat, then it would be in your interest to have more of a train bias. And with this whole thing with programming, it's not like you have to do all of one and none of the other. We're emphasizing a bias here, and it's just being very clear to people like what this type of training does. And again, I think that is very important to not tell someone that one thing does everything, because it doesn't. If you want specific results, you have to have a specific type of training. So we started with those two programs, and with the repair that Emily specializes in, which is the physical therapy, mobility kind of work. Those were our three flagship programs, and everything else grew out of there because as demand came in, okay, if people want to get better at running, we better have a sprint class. If people want to get better at gymnastics, then we better have a fly class. So everything was very specifically channeled to what people wanted. Right. And then we found that if we found the best coaches to do it, and if we developed if we emphasize enough to them that it's very important that these sessions are programmed and delivered very, very well and very systematically, then we were able to really deliver on our promise of this purposeful kind of training. Mm-hmm. So that's PHAROS, and that's why PHAROS it exists in the way that it does, just so we can deliver on our promise of purposeful training. And then I kind of wrote down three things here when it comes to programming. Why programming is different for different people. And I just wrote down programming for sport, programming for physique, and programming for health/life, because they are three different things. and you were programmed in different ways for those different kind of
Completely.
concepts.
Yeah,
You know,
as much as you want to keep it simple and say, oh, you just got to do X, you just got to do Y and Z. You're coming with different people, with different body types, different things they're doing on their own, and you kind of got to tailor
with
something.
different goals.
Yes.
You know, have you seen that West Side versus the World documentary, the West Side Barbell one?
No. What's that on
It's
about?
pretty awesome. So it's all about West Side Barbell. You know, probably the most famous powerlifting gym in the world.
Okay.
In Ohio, and you know that's kind of me. I was watching, thinking this is the the archetypal programming for sport. Those guys are willing to kind of die for their sport to get better at powerlifting. There's a great scene with AJ Roberts, and he's saying, like, in order to get better, I had to get to 350 pounds. I wasn't willing to get to 350 pounds without, like, I was basically going to die if I got to 350 pounds. I'm having sleep apnea. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't breathe. All that kind of stuff. And it's just saying, like, at the extreme levels of sport, people will go to, extreme places to get better.
Yeah. Playing ball. I mean, you do whatever it takes to get there. The body types that you have to develop, the stress to put yourself through.
Exactly. So obviously that's a different kind of programming and a different kind of emphasis from someone who's just trying to get generally fit. And then the second category is programming for physique, and obviously there are subcategories within this. There's obviously an extreme level of physique, which is the competitive physique, or there's someone who just wants to look good naked, and that's again
pretty simple.
But that's again that's a different kind of programming from the top one, and then the bottom one is programming for health/life, which is more of a general GPP type program, and obviously there's crossovers between the three. But programming for sport, programming for physique, and programming for health/life are kind of three primary categories that you can kind of think about programming for. And it all depends, like, where you set your priorities and what you are willing to do to get to where you want to go. So if you break them down, the first one, if you're programming for a sport, like if you're programming for an athlete, and if they want to get better at their sport and compete in that sport, then there's going to be a greater degree of specificity in the programming. At a certain phase in the program, there can be more of a general approach, but you're going to find pretty quickly that you're going to have to start getting specifically good at certain things. You're also going to have a much higher volume of training to cover the bases and what you're trying to get good at. If you look at CrossFit as a sport, the amount of volume they have to cover is so vast because there are so many disciplines you have to be good at. There's only so many there's only so many hours in the day, so of course volume stacks up pretty quickly. Of course, is that good for you in terms of health? Probably not. Is that necessary for the sport? Yes. So, again, that's where the division is. The demand of training is obviously very high because in order to get good at a sport at that level, the demand, the pressure, the stress is going to be high. And again, that's not something someone who's trying to just be generally fit needs to be so worried about. The next one is risk. Training for a sport, has a risk to it. If you're training, competitively at a high level, no matter how much warm up, cool down, recovery practice, all that kind of stuff you do, at a certain point there is an element of risk because you are risking your body in order to perform at a very high level. Whether that is, Olympic lifting or playing soccer or playing rugby or playing American football, whatever it is, there is inherent risk with those sports. Next is an interesting one, which is selfishness. Like, you have to be selfish if you're going to be good at a sport or if you're going to be a professional athlete. And that includes being selfish with your family, being selfish with your friends, with your time, all that kind of stuff, because you're going to have to spend a lot of time practicing and training for your sport. It comes with a sacrifice, and that sacrifice often is spending time with loved ones, not going out on meals, restaurants, not going to parties, all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of sacrifice. The third one is, the next one, sorry, is, you're going to have to do a lot of recovery practices. Mobility work, maybe ice baths, maybe hot cold therapy, sports massage, whatever it is, you're going to have to spend a lot of time in that area in order to keep being competitive at your sport. I
think there's a lot of practice just finding out what therapy or recovery works best for you.
Right.
Because there's just so many out there, and so many we're just, it's still new information and still a new field that we're trying to map out what works best for
Right.
each individual.
And then, of course, the nutrition in this area, the nutrition performance is going to be very different from the nutrition for the general population, and different from the general the nutrition for physique.
Is that going to be like massive protein for
Well, protein, but also glycogen. Like for a lot of athletes who have a high glycolytic demand, like a lot of their sport it requires carbohydrate to perform. Obviously, their carbohydrates are going to be a lot higher to support the training volume. So if someone's training 3 times a day, you can't expect to survive on a 2,000 calorie diet with 150 grams of carbohydrates. Like it's just not going to happen. So you have to eat relative to the work that you do, and to compete in any sport on a high level, chances are the calories and the macronutrients are going to be a lot higher, which is why people often, again, when the average person tries to copy the diet of the professional athlete, and it always ends very badly.
I'll pretend I'll even try and do a 3,000 or 3,500 calorie, but I'm not
Right.
putting the output out that I did once I was at a college professional level. Like, so even like if I go to the gym for 2 to 3 hours, it's just not going to equate to
Right.
trying to put that 3,000, 3,500 calorie diet in. It never works.
Never does. Yeah, so that's all these things together, are what's required to program for someone who is interested in being very good at a sport or an athlete at a high level. If we drop that down a level, I mean, it's not really dropping down, it's kind of segueing across into programming for physique. If I just want to look good naked, or if I'm getting on a stage for a competition to reveal my body, as it were, it's less about performance. So I'm no longer thinking about I'm going to perform so much at a high level. Of course, if you're on stage, there's a posing element to it. So there's a performance, thing there. But it's different from, a sporting kind of performance. So obviously in this area, there's going to be, potentially a lot more kind of time under tension, a lot more kind of hypertrophy kind of emphasis, more specificity in that kind of field. I'm trying to build muscle as opposed to I'm trying to do this workout quicker. Again, this is something we run into all the time at the gym. The difference between a program like Compete and a program like Build, for the most part, Compete has a more CrossFit element in that it is, you are working through these different skills for a time, and often the goal is efficiency over time under tension, which is the opposite of the Build program, which is often we're trying to create time under tension and reduce efficiency to increase stress, and allow the muscles to grow, put the muscles into under stress in order for them to adapt and grow. So there's a difference there that needs to be understood. So when I'm training for this kind of more of a body, more of a physique kind of goal, my training is gonna change drastically from the top one. It's a different kind of sport, a different kind of training, and a different kind of programming is required, and obviously different kind of nutrition. We just spoke about carbohydrates, glycogen, and for physique, again, it depends. It depends on what phase of the training you're in and how close to competition you are. But chances are that the glycogen manipulation is going to be very different from if you're performing in a sport.
And for everybody, the glycogen is going to be coming from carbohydrates primarily, or are those going to come from certain carbohydrates?
Certain carbohydrates, but also as you get closer to an event, likely you're going to taper down your glycogen, and the glycolytic need is going to be lower, toward the competition, because you're going to be cycling down to strip the fat, basically. Okay. So because I'm not so concerned with performance, in those last 2 weeks before a stage or a photo shoot or whatever it is, you're not really worried about how well you perform. You're worried about how you look. So you can afford to drop those carbs right down, and focus more on your
What are we talking? Just like fish and rice, or we're just talking?
Yeah, I mean,
not even at that point.
Yeah.
What's a plate look like? If we're like stripping down the glycogen on there, it's just going to be like a.
Well, you're going to reduce the grams per day of glycogen. Okay. So you might be You might start, your cycle at 300 grams carbohydrates a day if you're a maybe more, 400 grams a day if you're a big enough guy or a big enough girl. And then as you get towards the competition, last couple of weeks of competition, you might be dropping those carbs right down to 150 grams, 100 grams, whatever it is.
Okay.
For consumption. So it's just a strategic reduction in carbohydrates in order to look your optimal self, as opposed to performing optimally.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. The output rather than, the output in terms of like performance. You know, like, hey, I need to perform at a certain level. This, I just need to make sure it looks
damn
nice.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It shines, it sparkles, the whole thing.
Yeah, and actually, we have this in our Limitless challenge that we're running right now. Like, you ask people what their goals are and what motivates them the most. And if what motivates them the most is performance, then chances are we're gonna allow more glycogen in their diet, and we're gonna keep the fats a little lower. If their only goal is to look better naked, we're probably gonna reduce their carbohydrates and probably up their fats. Protein's always gonna be the same. But it all depends on what that person's goals are and what motivates them the most and what makes them the happiest. What gets them out of bed in the morning and think, yes, I can't wait to do this today. If it's performance and performing at a high level, then chances are you're going to include more glycogen. If it's, I don't care. I just want to look great naked. And it's like, okay, and let's cut down the carbs and.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It just depends on what, like I said, what motivates you and what interests you and what gets you out of bed in the morning. I'm 42. Well, I'm almost 42 in March. Obviously, I'm a dad now. And, I certainly still enjoy the performance element of working out. I still do a couple of competes a week. But I spend most of my time in that kind of build category because I kind of just want to look hot for my wife. Don't want to leave me for a younger man, So, you just have to be very clear about, what does what and what your priorities are and, what you want to, how you want to look and how you want to feel.
No, completely. It's trying to figure out even, when you can't perform or you're not competing or you're not training for something. It's like, what can I do on a daily basis in the gym? Is that going to be to look good? And then at the same time, I want to be able to dunk a basketball.
Right, exactly.
I got to be doing my legs. I've been doing some plyometrics. And I got to be cycling that in.
Because I've gone both ways. I've done times cycles where I've just done build and not done any kind of like more performance based stuff, and I just felt kind of sluggish and heavy, and I felt very non-athletic, which I don't like. And I've done times when I've done too much the other way and not really seen the aesthetic that I like. So I have to find that balance for myself between the disciplines in order to look the way I want to look and feel the way that I want to feel. And I think most people at PHAROS, there's such a broad fitness platter, as it were. It's like it's finding the optimal, selection of classes and training that fits with what they want, how they want to feel, how they want to look, and it's different for everybody.
Completely. You guys crush it with by having the platter that someone can jump in from class to class and do what they need to do or want to do, and it's like, oh, I'm hitting that need today, or I'm covering that thing. Because again, not everybody's training for the competition or the look, but if they have the platter there, they're able to give the body, I'd imagine, some rest here, here, or not hitting and draining themselves. And
often the problem is there's often a problem between what people enjoy and what people say that they want. And I'll give you an example. So I have a lot of guys in the gym that love that CrossFit feeling of just like that hurt, that stress, that really pushing their bodies as far as they can push it and causing themselves a lot of like,
guilty.
I'm on the floor, I'm dying, I can't breathe kind of feeling, because it's addictive. That pain is addictive. But then they come up and say to me, I want to look more muscular, I want to look better, but I don't want to stop doing this. It's like at a certain point, some of this is going to have to go away. Like you can't keep doing this to your body and expect to grow. It just doesn't work that way. So you, to a certain degree, you have to give up the things you enjoy, in quote marks, and start focusing on the things that are actually going to make you in line with your goals. So that may be, okay, you need to cut down on CrossFit type stuff. You need to focus more on bodybuilding type stuff. and you need to change your nutritional habits because you told me that you wanted this. And if you're telling me you want this, then this is what you need to do.
Are you
And
able to
some
level
do it.
people? Do people get it?
Some, they get it. Whether they're willing to do it is another thing because, you know, things are addictive. We find things that we like, that we enjoy. Like I said, the things that get us out of bed in the morning. And after a certain amount of time, it kind of becomes how you define yourself. You know, I'm the person that does this. And you go along with that for a long period of time. But then, like I said, sometimes your goals change. So you have to kind of redefine yourself. Well, I'm no longer the person that does this. I am the person that does this. And now you're going into a territory you don't know so well. So now you're almost like starting again. It's like, well, now I'm redefining my purpose. I'm redefining my body. I'm redefining my workout because I'm trying to create a different stress because I have a different goal. And for some people, that's actually very challenging because they've become very comfortable with who they are and what they do. And now, you know, you're asking them to change. You know, it's saying, I don't want you to do this anymore. I need you to do this. And it can be a very kind of daunting and you know, upsetting is probably too strong a word, but you know, it's certainly a challenging change that people have to go through, because like I said, everything is very specific, and you have to, if you want a specific result, you have to train specifically for it. Which kind of then segues me into the last category, kind of programming for health / life, which now falls into more of a, you know, GPP kind of area, general physical performance. Because in this area, when I'm just thinking more about, you know, I just want to stay healthy, I just want longevity. I'm not so worried about, you know, gaining muscle. I'm not so worried about, you know, being a great athlete. I just want to, like, you know, feel good, look good, all that kind of stuff. And this really gives you freedom. So at this point, you're really like, okay, I've got my 7 days in a week. I'm going to spend a couple of days in the strength category, a couple of days in the conditioning category, a couple of days in the recovery category. And then I'm kind of like in that GPP, general physical preparedness kind of area. And this for a lot of people, you know, is enough. Like, the person who comes in the gym, and we have a ton of these, you know, 40, 50, 60-year-old people who, you know, their goal right now is to live a long and healthy life. And they're into keep their heart healthy, they're into keep their joints healthy, their lungs healthy. They want to just, you know, wake up every day, do some fitness in quote marks, and feel good about themselves. And when you're in that category, you know, like I said, you have a little bit more freedom. You want a healthy heart and a healthy mind, so you're just dipping into these different programs, and kind of mixing it up without worrying too much about, you know, extreme performance or the best body in the world. You're just in there to stay healthy. So, you know, obviously there's kind of like when it comes to stress, like the first category we talk about, programming for sport, you know, has the most stress because it has the most, you know, the most elements to it. And then the physique one, you know, I don't know whether it's a category down or just a category across, but it's a different kind of stress. And then the last one has the least, because again, it's more of a, you know, it's more of a wellness lifestyle type programming. So yeah, they're the three kind of categories of programming that I like to kind of like think about and kind of define to people. And then, you know, we mentioned this word multiplicity a lot, because that's kind of what we are at PHAROS. Is we are a facility that has, you know, a hybrid style programming. You can do as much of whatever you want as you like.
Yeah, I learned the word from you guys. I use it all the time now when I'm going in and training. It's multiplicity. You gotta check out the show, PHAROS.
Right. Yeah.
You guys got
because
me
what
on
it
that.
allows is a GPP with a bias. Because at a certain point, having a good level of GPP, and what I mean by that is like you are generally good at everything. I'm generally strong. I generally have good cardiovascular ability, and I'm generally mobile. That base is good for everything, and then from there you kind of like start start adding in your biases. My bias is I want to get more muscular, so I'm going to be biased towards build. My bias is I want to get better at sprinting and running, so my bias is towards the sprint program. Like it's just you add in your biases, once you establish that base. And the multiplicity we have at PHAROS like allows people to do that, and I love that. It's just it's just a great way to be able to plan long term for the way that you want to live your fitness life. Because as we always say, like everything works but nothing works forever. You will inevitably get bored of one thing. You will inevitably want to try something new, to learn, to grow, to practice new things, to evolve. So you have to kind of have variability in your training lifestyle at some point. And kind of the last thing I wanted to talk about, because this kind of came up recently, was the ectomorph, mesomorph, endomorph, thing. Do you know what these are?
No. What do we got?
Okay. So when I talk about body types, and I have people that come into the gym, and they're all different body types. An ectomorph is going to be kind of tall and skinny. That's how they've always been. They struggle to gain weight. They struggle to put on muscle. They generally have a high metabolism. And, you have to, and we'll get into this in a second, but you have to, program very specifically for this person if they want to grow. And then you have a mesomorph. A mesomorph has always been kind of naturally muscular, find it easy to gain muscle, pretty athletic usually kind of broad-chested. Like I said, their response to training happens pretty quickly. It's a lot easier for those kind of people to change their body. They're the kind of people that annoy everybody. I think I'm probably in that category. The bodies respond very well to training. And then the last category is an endomorph, who've always kind of been on the heavy set side. So tend to have broader hips, tend to have broader shoulders, tend to easily store fat. They can also have a lot of muscle, but the likelihood is they store fat fairly easily. They gain weight fairly easily. So ectomorph, mesomorph, endomorph. And then you kind of have subcategories within there. So people can be somewhere between an ectomorph and a mesomorph. They can be somewhere between a mesomorph and an endomorph. It's not like you're definitely this person, you're definitely that person, you're definitely this person. It's kind of like the lines are blurred at a certain point. But you do need to ask yourself, in general terms, what body type am I, and what kind of training do I need to do relative to my body type to achieve my goals? So if we go back to the programming and the nutritional side of things, like an ectomorph, in order for them to grow, if that is their goal, then they're going to need a lot more calories and a lot more hypertrophy type training. Probably in that lower rep range, that kind of 6 to 12 rep range, maybe even 6 to 10 rep range, because they need the big compound hormone boosting lifts, like the big squats, the big deadlifts, the big bench press. Combine that with a lot of calories and a lot of protein. That's what they really need to grow. So, it's really with the ectomorph, it's putting the emphasis back on big lifts and big calories. Yeah, that's as simple as I can.
I don't think people realize when they do those like heavy compound, exercises. Like you're talking about the bench, the deep squats, like those are hormone releasing exercises.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you need those big hormonal testosterone releasing growth hormone type exercises. In the middle category, the mesomorph. If you are a mesomorph, you're kind of lucky. Pretty much whatever you do works. So you can be a little more flexible with your rep ranges and your set ranges and your programming. You'll find it fairly easy to put on muscle. Calories will kind of be in that mid range, like I said before, you probably have a decent athletic background. It's already come natural to you. You probably move pretty well. Have a good deal of strength. You pick up things relatively quickly. I also find like neuromuscularly, they tend to be pretty engaged. They're pretty in tune with their bodies. And yeah, you're just in that good space where you can be kind of flexible.
Yeah.
Then endomorphs, like I said, endomorphs tend to store fat more easily, so they need to be a little more careful with their nutrition and their calories. And their training should be more in that kind of like higher rep range if they're trying to like, lose some excess fat. So if we think of them kind of the opposite spectrum to the ectomorphs, if the ectomorphs are lifting like,
we're going
big heavy lifts, we're kind of going that higher rep range of like
high sets,
12
low
to
reps,
15s,
like 5x5s, but you're talking for these 12, 15.
Yeah, the higher rep ranges to try and trim down. Now this is under the assumption, of course, that we're looking to improve body composition. Obviously, if these endomorphs are powerlifters, then you're definitely not doing high sets of low reps.
No.
You're still doing your big lifts. This is only if the goal is body composition. We're talking about, again, we're kind of in that middle category of programming for physique and improving body composition. And yeah, an endomorph, if they do want to trim down and lose that fat, they should be thinking about those higher rep ranges and doing a good amount of kind of like cardiovascular work, that high intensity cardiovascular work. And yeah, I mean, like I said, there are subcategories and people can kind of like be betwixt and in between these things. But in general terms, that's a good kind of base to go off.
Okay.
What do you think you are?
I think I'm that middle one, but I remember going to college and I was 130 pounds and I had to play against these 200-pound point guards in college. And I'm, 19 years old and 130 pounds of my wet. It's like, okay, just ground beef and rice, hitting the gym, lifting heavy, high rep. And then I put on 35 pounds.
Right. Well,
right,
you're actually an ectomorph.
Which one is that? That's
you were naturally thin.
Yeah.
The thinner guy, and you had to like really like eat and lift heavy to gain muscle.
Once I got to it, but now I feel like I'm in the middle where it's like I can control myself. It's like,
right.
Do I want to bulk this? But
so you started as an ectomorph and you evolved into a mesomorph.
Yeah.
So actually, you're probably somewhere between. Yeah, you're between an ecto and a meso. But it's an interesting thing, and it's often something that is overlooked. And again, it goes back to like people trying to copy other people's programs, when that person is a completely different person to them. I mean, again, a classic example is, I think a lot of women look at some of the top CrossFit athletes who are very muscular and have a good deal of size, and let's say they're 100. The woman in front of me is 140 pounds, and they're looking at these 180 pound like big athletes, and they're worried about turning into them, and it's just like, this is never going to happen. Like, do not worry. Like, I
don't want muscle. I don't want to look like that. Like,
yeah, it's just you're a different body type. You're coming in from a very different place. Your volume is so much lower. There is no way that you're gonna develop into.
It's gonna take a long time. I mean, that just doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. It's not gonna work. But that said, if I have an endomorph in front of me, and she tells me I just want to lose some weight and I just want to improve my body composition, me having to do heavy power cleans, heavy snatches, and heavy deadlifts is on me. That's a bad decision.
Yes.
If I have an endomorph in front of me, and all she wants to do is trim down, lose weight, you have to program relative to the goal. So programming the big heavy lifts for someone that's trying to lose weight that isn't endomorph, that's just bad programming. Mm-hmm. So again, you have to, all these things come into play when programming. What's the body type of this person? What are their goals? What's their training history? What's their lifestyle? And what motivates them? All these things have to come into play to really come up with the perfect program. So, at PHAROS, we have the game plan where we sit down with people at the beginning of their kind of training with us, and it's like, okay, let's really plan out your training week, your training months, your training year. How does it look? And you base that game plan on these elements. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is psychological. It's not just physical. It's like you have to take into consideration, where this person is coming from. The whole argument of you have to meet people where they're at. You have to meet people where they're at. You can't impose upon them too much. You can't impose upon them too little. You have to program the right thing for them at the right time to get them where they need to go now.
Because there's discipline you have to instill in there, and it's like, how do I not overimpose?
Not overimpose.
And step on toes, but
say,
I know where you're at, and I understand. But then you maybe never have been there. So I mean, it's really interesting that there are that many trainers and there's that many gyms, like just all around. But like we talked about in the early episodes, like what makes a good trainer? How do you really know and understand where the person's coming from to build something for them?
Yeah, it really is that, and it's really caring about people. We have such a great staff now for us now. I'm so proud of them because we're in this Limitless challenge right now, and this is the first time that we've really brought in all our coaches and gave them, the teams, put them in control and said, you guys are ready for this. You're going to take control of your teams. You're going to program for them. You're going to do their macronutrients. You're going to do their calories, and you're going to guide them through this process. And just to see how committed they are, how much time they're spending with their clients, just how much care they're taking in the development and growth of their clients is, it's been so rewarding to see. And that's what you hope for. You hope for people. You hope to develop people that genuinely care about their clients and about, what they do on a daily basis, how they project themselves, how they behave, how they treat people, how they speak to people, how you communicate with your clients is a huge thing. Like, I can easily say something that's going to upset them and send them the other way, or I can easily say something that's going to bring them back in. Like, listen, none of us are perfect. I've said the wrong thing at the wrong time, like many times. It's by no means an easy thing to do, but you have to find a language and you have to find a way of communicating that's going to keep them where they need to be.
Completely.
And help them improve.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, that's it for today. I hope there was some useful information in there. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, you can hit us up on Instagram at PHAROS Acro Park, or you can find me at Blvd on Instagram. And please come by and see us. We have a brand new gym called The Base. It's a new open gym. It's in the same location, 1316 Glendale Blvd. It's a beautiful new space that we've designed specifically for the open gym. It's included in our Limitless membership. So if you're a Limitless member of the gym, you can use The Base to accessorize in. We have everything in there. We have Arsenal strength equipment. We have techno-gym conditioning equipment. We have powerlifting racks. We have deadlift platforms. We have a dumble room.
Sled push. We can get on the slides. It's great in there, man.
It's a great
beautiful
time. So please come by and see it. And apart from that, guys, we will see you next time. Please, if you can, like this podcast, share it with your friends, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks, Brennan.
All right. Cheers, guys.